Welcome back to our whiteboard. We are still with the upper limb. Now this time I want to look at some orientation as far as the myology of the upper limbs are concerned. In fact, the muscles are concerned. Now, if we've seen that, we want to look at muscles that form the anterior, compartment of the forearm, and they are the flexors. We are going to look at those ones, flexors. Now, when we look at the flexors, there are three groups of these flexors. We have the superficial group, we have the intermediate group, and then we have the deep group. Now, for the superficial group, they are 4 in number. For the deep group, we have just 1, and for the intermediate group, we have 1, and for the deep group, we will talk about 3 of them. Now, these flexors, in fact, the superficial flexors, take origin, almost all of them, they take origin from what we call the common flexor origin. Now, let's just sketch this to illustrate what we're talking about. Assuming this, the hand. And let's say this is the lateral epicondyle. We have medial epicondyle. The medial epicondyle is more prominent. Let's see, we have such a structure. Now, what happens is that these superficial muscles, this first one that we talk about, which is known as pronator teres, takes origin, from the medial supracondylar ridge. Its medial humeral head takes origin from the medial supracondylar ridge and gets inserted on the anterior shaft of the radius, because we know radius will be at where the thumb is of the radius. Now, the next muscle which takes origin from this time around, the common flexor origin, and that's the medial epicondyle, takes origin from common flexor origin or medial epicondyle and comes all the way and inserts to the base of the second and third metacarpals. This muscle is known as flexor carpi radialis. Flexor carpi, radialis, because the side of the radius, flexor carpi radialis, and is able to insert on the basis of third and fourth metacarpals. I'm interested in telling you that the metacarpal because the names may confuse you, because the word carpi, you might think it's going to insert on one of the carpal bones, not so. Now, the next bone, the next muscle, which also takes origin from the common flexor origin, that's the medial epicondyle, and comes. Now, this time around, there's a band of fibrous tissue known as flexor retinaculum. Takes insertion from the superficial fibers of the flexor retinaculum, and beyond it gives off this triangular band of fibrous tissue known as palmar aponeurosis. So you will get to know that the palmar aponeurosis is just an extension of this muscle known as palmaris longus. Palmaris longus. In fact, it can be absent in some people. Now, the next muscle takes origin also from the common flexor origin, and this time around inserts. You know, this muscle is very interesting because that is flexor carpi ulnaris, because at the ulnar side, and we are saying that this anterior aspect, you know, is for the flexors. So flexor carpi, you know, but actually it's like going to the base of the fifth metacarpal base. Let's say this is the base of fifth metacarpal. But before it attaches to the base of fifth metacarpal, it's, you know, found within it is a tendon known as, you know, found within it, a tendon, you know, houses the pisiform bone. And, you know, therefore the pisiform is a sesamoid bone, as well as the hook of Hammett. So these are the superficial groups of muscles. All that you have to know is that there's a common flexor origin by way of the medial epicondyle, but the pronator teres, the humeral head of the pronator teres, takes origin from the medial supracondylar ridge and inserts the anterior surface of the shaft of the humerus. Now, the remaining flexors, superficial flexors, will take origin from the common flexor origin, medial epicondyle. So we have one moving from medial epicondyle to the base of the base of the second and third, base of the second, you know, second. So this is where the first metacarpal will be here. So to the base of second and third metacarpals, and that bone, that muscle is known as flexor carpi radialis, because at the radial side. Also coming from that same common extensor flexor origin, we have what we call it palmaris longus, which may be absent in some individuals, taking attachment at the superficial fibers of the flexor retinaculum. Beyond it, spreading, forming this fibrocartilaginous structure, triangular shape, palmar aponeurosis. And the last one we talk about in this group is the flexor carpi ulnaris. Now, the flexor carpi ulnaris is taking origin from the same common flexor origin, but inserting at the base of the fifth metacarpal. So, moving on, we want to look at the intermediate group of muscles. Now, for the intermediate group of muscles, what they do is that it also takes origin, it has two heads. The intermediate group of muscle is known as flexor digitorum superficialis. And it takes origin, you know, the humeral head takes origin from the common flexor origin, and then the radial head from the anterior oblique line. And what happens is that this muscle distally, and then gives off these tendons. But one thing is that we know that these bones, phalanges are going to have, these fingers are going to have 3 phalanges each. Now, at the proximal phalanx, the tendons bifurcate at the size, and then insert at the size of the middle phalanx. So this way, so that they can provide accommodation to the next deeper muscle we will talk about, flexor digitorum profundus. So we will look at that, the deeper muscle. So this is the only intermediate muscle that we have. And you know, because it's inserting at the proximal phalanx is for what? It's for flexing of the proximal, interphalangeal joint. Okay. Now for the next group of muscles, the deep muscles. Now this is the bone. This will be the radius because it's located at the thumb side. And this will be the ulna. Obviously, there will be interosseous membrane between them. Now, there is one muscle which is coming all the way, and that muscle is known as flexor digitorum. Sorry, it's known as so all the way from here to the thumb, and it's known as flexor pollicis longus. Flexor pollicis longus, because it's going to the thumb. It's going to flex the thumb. Flexor pollicis longus. And we are going to have another muscle, which this time around to take attachment from the adjoining interosseous membrane and the shafts of the ulna, and it will go deeper all the way, go behind this, go under the bifurcation of the tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis to the distal phalanges, and this is known as flexor digitorum profundus. And profundus means it's the deep one, and because it inserts at the distal phalanges, it's for flexing at the distal interphalangeal joint. Now the last muscle, which is most deepest of these three, is quadrangular in shape. So let's say is this quadrangular, four-sided in shape, attaches at the distal aspect of the shaft, anterior shaft of the radius and ulna. Is known as pronator quadratus. This muscle. So these are the flexors of the forearm, and we'll look at the extensors of the forearm in our next section. Thank you.